This video is about the assembly of the DF500 and the XL700 flat pack. These are parts cut CNC. The fit is perfect. All right, a few things that you'll need. You'll need a drill, right? And a driver, or just a driver and a drill. You could even use a screwdriver, yeah? And the drill bit size that I'm using is size for these number 8 screws. These are 1 5/8 long, so that's about 40 some millimeters, 42 millimeters, something like that. And the drill bit is about 1/8 inch or under. I think I'm using a 7/32 here, so probably about 2.5 millimeters, and that will create a nice pilot hole that will go in these countersunk pre-marked drill holes, yeah? With the DF500, I like to think of it in 2 components. This is the first sub-assembly, or the cradle, and then the base, or the main part, right? So let's start with the cradle. Now, of course, this is the front with my logo, and these 2 parts are the sides, and there is a left and a right because one edge has this round over that goes to the top and to the inside, something like that. See what I mean? You could get it wrong by putting this over here. So just make sure that this rounded edge is to the inside, and you'll see why later, right? So we just put those together, something like that. Pre-drill a hole. I'm gonna add a bit of glue. We'll add a couple of screws. It's a good idea to make sure that your CNC joints are all snug and tight, right? And then we can take this piece that I call the front, make sure this groove is up or toward you. We're gonna put the cradle in place just like that. And we need to make a mark. Just need a little straight edge because you use something like this. We're gonna put a mark right here, defining the bottom portion of this cradle. We'll also add a mark here and here. You can remove that. This little spacer, we want to add a little bit of glue. And I'll put it right with this bottom edge on the line and between my 2 marks. You could pre-drill this if you want, but really not necessary. All right, so a little bit of a revision to this spacer block. What we're doing now is cutting a CNC cavity, and this spacer, which is the same thickness material, could literally just be glued into place. Of course, you could drill through it and connect it to this vertical divider. That wouldn't be a bad thing. Next, we'll assemble the vertical divider and this bottom. Make sure that countersunk hole is down. This can go either way, right? Just add some glue. Pre-drill. These have already been pre-drilled. They've been assembled once. I'll go through the motions. Add a screw. Looks good. This comes in from the back. Of course, like I said, this is the front with that little groove. We'll add glue and bring this in through there. What you want to do here is make sure that this is even. Pre-drill. You can add 1 screw without tightening it down quite tight, and make sure it sits flat. If it rocks a little bit, you can twist this one way or the other. This needs to go that way. Too much. A lot better. Then we'll add the 3rd screw at the top. Again, pre-drill. If you don't pre-drill a pilot, you could split your plywood, right? And that's it. At this point, this one's probably dry enough. You could sand the sides and the front. So you could sand all this, break all the edges. We'll add glue. That should drop in place. Again, pre-drill. There you have it, a beautiful DF500 cradle that is ready to teach your domino some new tricks. With the DF500 dock assembled, right, we can clamp this guy in place. And I intentionally made this to not sit on your workbench because I don't want somebody putting their machine in thinking that it's going to hold it. It needs clamped, absolutely. Of course, the easy way is just a couple of clamps, one on each side, right? I always thought it'd be a good idea if you use this a lot and you had a special place on your bench, you could simply put it in place, add a mark on each side, drill a hole all the way through here, or a couple of holes, size it appropriately for a knob with threads, right? Add an insert, you could easily secure the dock. Typically when I use the DF500, I just use my bench and tail vise. Just put that in place. But I want to add a bit of security, so I typically will add a clamp. You may have noticed a little nub on the handle here on the DF500, and that engages perfectly in this little slot. And remember this shim we put in place? That captures this handle on the backside, making it nice and tight. This handle is slightly tapered, as well as a matching 2-degree angle on each side of the dock and also in the front. And with that, this engages perfectly. These are round to conform to the handle on the sides, and that grabs that DF500 beautifully. From here, you have access to all your controls, right? Adjustments, easy to switch and change bits. Of course, vacuum, power. But the main reason I came up with the dock in the first place is the ease of function. And you can find that in my other video, Tips and Tricks for the Festool Domino, link in the description. This video is all about the assembly of the XL700 flat pack. These are CNC cut parts. You're going to need a little bit of glue, a drill with a drill bit about 1/8 inch or smaller, maybe 2.5 millimeters. I believe this is a 7/32. You need an impact or at least a driver for your drill, right? Or you could even assemble it with a screwdriver. To begin assembly, we're going to take the back and we're going to put the logo face down. We're going to find the bottom. Notice the 2 countersunk holes. Those go toward the front and these countersunk holes go down. So we will flip that this way, right? You'll find 2 side pieces and they are identical. Just make sure that the countersunk holes are out and toward the bottom. Something like that. At this point, I find it easier to take a clamp. We'll temporarily hold this in place right here. That way we can make any adjustments we need. Just makes life easier. Of course, all these parts should be flush at the corners. That looks pretty good. Tighten that up. Now we can pre-drill these holes. We'll add some glue there and there. I put 1 ribbon down the middle and 1 toward the edge. Then we can pull that loose and add more glue to connect the back. This has been assembled once, so you can see the pilot holes are already there. But the process is exactly the same. Make sure that the sides are tight. You could even add a clamp. That's what you should have at this point. And you could let this set up a little bit and then sand all this flush. You could sand the bottom, sand some of the logo, will clean it up. It'll remove some of the residual and just look a lot better. Now we're ready to add the supports. These will go in place just like so. And then we can add the front piece. And I should have mentioned at the beginning of the video, you'll also need a block of wood that is exactly 1.5 inches in thickness. This is really important. This will create the perfect size for the handle on the XL700. What I've done here is I've taken 2 pieces of particle board that are 3/4. You should use calipers to check that. That is in fact 1.5 inches. MDF also works well, 3/4 MDF. Boom, 1.5 inches. You can even use a 4x2, 2x4, right? 1.5 inches. Metric, this is 38.1, so you can just literally just cut a block and make sure that it's 38.1. As I mentioned, MDF is pretty accurate. This is 3/4 stacked up, makes 1.5 inches. Plywood is typically going to be undersized, so you won't be able to use that unless you added veneer or whatever you would need to ensure that you have an accurate 1.5 inches, 38.1 millimeters. Super important. We'll add some glue, add our spacer. Make sure that the 2 vertical supports are flush with the bottom's front edge, and we can pre-drill and add some screws. At this point, we can just leave the spacer in place, add glue to the front. Make sure your countersunk holes are facing out. Pre-drill. At this point, we can remove the spacer, maybe. And add the rest of our screws. And that's it. There's our XL700 flat pack, all assembled, ready to accept your beloved XL700 machine. You'll notice that this 1.5 inch space fits the handle perfectly. And then this can be clamped to the front of your workbench. With the flat pack for the XL700 complete, we can anchor this to the bench a number of ways. You could simply add a clamp or 2, might be better this way, right? 1 on each side, that'll hold it in place securely. I always thought it'd be a good idea to take your XL, put it in place, drill a hole right through the bottom, right into your workbench, right? Then size that hole and countersink it to fit a machine screw, add an insert, right? And then maybe a couple of marks to where that's indexed, and you could just add a screw to hold that in place. A lot of ways to do it. Of course, here at my bench, this is typically how I do it. Anchored with a tail vise. And this dude slips in here. Just make sure this flat part is all the way back. That'll index in place, and that's boom, solid and secure. From here, you can see the switch is easily accessible. Power, vacuum, right? Makes it easy to make adjustments. Of course, changing the bit is also easy in this position. But the big appeal for me is why I came up with this to begin with, is the ease of use for cutting parts. Check out my other video, Tips and Tricks for the Festool Domino, link in the description.